So this is the one where I'm allowed to be coarse and vulgar, isn't it?
What?
Well, for anyone who didn't hear our Breaking Borders one, that's probably going to be a little bit more respectable than our Breaking Bollocks one, I would think. Overall, it has some content.
Yeah, but I doubt. I doubt it will be really that like prestigious. High and mighty.
That dog's fucking me off. You probably can't hear it on the podcast, so
go shoot it, and then you can start an action movie franchise.
A very good one, actually. Have you seen any of those?
No, I wanted to find the first one. I saw the third one and the second one on Netflix. But...
All right, okay. Oh, I'm sure we can. It might be on Sky. We'll have to have a look. I wouldn't mind because I think I've only seen the first one. I would like to see them all. Why are you looking at my belly? Is it because I'm fat?
No, I was just looking at you fiddling with your buttons.
Oh, that's just general anxiety. So, what on earth is happening? I don't know I haven't... what the fuck's going on? Is this a podcast? Have we started?
Well, we normally do an intro.
Go on then.
I'm feeling in a weird mood today.
Fight you are.
Yeah. This is gonna be an interesting one.
Well, let's get on with it then. We're starting a bit later than I'd be comfortable with, so I'm going to be poking you to finish in the next 5 minutes. This is
a little bit later than you're comfortable with.
Yeah, because I've been good this week. I've achieved a lot.
I woke up at 7 AM, so I'm hardly like thrilled.
You probably didn't go to sleep till much before that.
Well, exactly.
Come on then. Start the podcast.
Anyway,
no, that's how you end the podcast.
Fuck you. Fuck off. Shut up. Be quiet. Just for five. Not for five. Just
words.
Wait.
Get your words in order.
Wait.
Engage brain.
And I don't have one. Anyway,
I told you that's how you finish.
I will genuinely assault you.
Genuinely. You spat on me. That is assault.
Well, you're vaccinated, so...
And vinegar.
I can...
And pepper.
Shit in your mouth and it'll be fine.
Please don't. Please don't do that.
I don't know what...
That's a good starting level, isn't it? I mean...
I don't know what went through my mind to say that, but I'm in a weird mood. I'll say that. Anyway.
Get on with it!
Well, then shut up. Prick. Hello, guilty pleasures. I'm Fireball.
And I'm the Orbiter.
And welcome.
That's got to be the first episode in many, many months where I haven't interrupted your intro.
Because it took you off guard. And welcome
No, it didn't.
to Breaking Bollocks.
I just thought I'd mix it up a bit.
Episode 78.
Guilt.
I'm going to say it.
Just guilty silence.
Oh.
So have you got anything you want to confess to?
No. I deny any allegations made against me.
Oh, right, okay. Unlike Matt Hancock.
Oh, yeah. I've seen lots of, like, murmurs about that, but... It's
exactly.
Mainly,
fucking
like...
murmurs.
It's mainly, like, aimed at Keir Starmer for not asking him to resign. Which, I mean, like, fair enough, Keir Starmer's, like, just a deflated balloon of a politician.
It's a fucking disgrace in that
it
is literally a murmur in the news. It's just like an afterthought. And yet the front page of the Scottish Daily Mail yesterday was, "Have they no respect?" Talking about Harry and Meghan.
Oh yeah,
like,
whenever the government fucks up, notice that they very quickly wheel out some bullshit story about the royals or some celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, like, who gives a fuck that? I mean, it's just.
Oh, I have opinions to give today.
Matt's cock in hand is just he should be going to prison.
Yeah, it is criminal negligence. They have killed 120,000 people, and if you watch the news in the UK,
not that
you wouldn't see that.
I'm on about his fucking handing all his contracts to his mates.
Well, we've known about that since like fucking April. They've been doing that fairly in the open. I don't think that's
but it's actually been officially like it's been through a court case and it's been officially recognised that it was unlawful what he did.
Oh, so it's gone through the system and nothing's actually happened to him. It's almost like it's broken.
Yeah, it could be.
But this is something that I saw, and it was someone in the UK looking at Australia's perspective on what's going on in the UK.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I think the situation is generally quite good in Australia.
There's something weird going on with Facebook over there, though, and the Prime Minister.
I have no idea what goes on with Australian politics.
Well,
you guys change Prime Ministers like every 5 seconds.
There's a really important thing going on that could have major implications in that there's a row kind of broken out between Facebook and the media organisations in that the news media are wanting money from Facebook to post news items, basically, because it's like a publishing outlet, if you know what I mean. Facebook to quote news items for people to be able to quote news items from news organisations on Facebook. The news organisations are wanting money for it, and Facebook are saying no. And so they've basically banned all the news media outlets on Facebook in Australia.
All right, that's kind of weird.
So it's kind of playing out at the moment.
You know, the thing that I saw was it was an Australian TV host saying about the terrible situation in the UK and how much we've lost. But like, if you watch the TV news or even like read print media, like you would have no idea that that was going on.
No,
we've been fucking gaslit by our government and our media, and that sounds sort of conspiratorial, but no, it's just
thing
ridiculous.
Is, I mean, I'm at the point now where I don't obviously I'm not going to keep it up because I do kind of get sort of sucked back into it, but I've deleted my news apps off my phone. I've stopped watching the news on TV and stuff because it's just like it's not. The times that I tend to put it on, I would stick the telly on when I'm just sort of getting ready for bed, and it's all press preview stuff, and it's like, this is just like, I don't trust the media to give me the news, so I would rather go without than be told lies. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you got to get it from somewhere. I'll probably, this is only today that I've kind of done that, and I've been through and sorted out some notifications on my phone as well, just to kind of get my mental health in order. But I need to find a news outlet that just tells the stories as they are and not giving it all the bollocks, because I'm just, the British media is just, it's disgusting. You know, that really hit me. The front page of the Scottish Daily Mail saying, "Have they no respect?" It's like, are you fucking joking me? Like, you know, they've redefined hypocrisy. Basically, it's like, how can you? Honestly, it's just like they're sticking two fingers.
At this point, my main reason for wanting Scottish independence is I don't want the UK to exist anymore. That's the state that I'm at with, like, the patriotic feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've got the vote coming up in May for the Scottish elections. I don't know. You know, I mean, I've been saying that I'd vote SNP just because I want to get independence through, and that's true. But even them, I would rather have the Scottish Greens in. I don't know whether or not it's going to be one of these. Up here, we tend to have these sort of points-based things where you get like a first, second, and third choice, don't we?
Yeah, because we actually have a somewhat proportional system up here, which is why the government isn't an absolute shambles.
Yeah.
Because good electoral systems tend to lead to more representative democracies.
But it's kind of weird, though, that you say that, but that proportional system has delivered a huge majority for the SNP up here.
That's because most of the people up here at least voted for the SNP, even if they don't necessarily like them.
Yeah. It's anyway.
Which you can't say for the Tories, despite their, 60, 80 seat majority.
Yeah.
So. Which they're still losing votes on, I think. Oh, yeah, that was something. And I think this was like an attempt to distract from things, as it usually is, but it's still stupid. Appointing free speech champions for universities, despite the fact that they have explicitly warned against talking about white privilege in schools or using any resources from a group that might be anti-capitalist.
Who was it? There's a
It's just
I can't remember who it was, but there's a
stupid, especially right now, because who's speaking at universities right now?
Well, there's I think it was Yale, professor at Yale University, that's looking at the things that are being said about that and the situation that's happening in Britain at the moment, and he said that it's basically straight out of the Nazi playbook.
Yeah, no, that all the sort of early warning signs of fascism you see quite a lot.
But it's like, the thing is, it's clothing the enemy in the terminology that actually applies to you. This whole freedom of speech thing. Yeah, freedom of speech is important, but it's making out that the enemies of that principle are the ones that are actually the least guilty of breaking that kind of principle. Do you know what I mean? It's like
it does seem to be that most of the people that clamour on about this are simply just mad that people are exercising their right to free speech by telling them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
It's not anything that the government's doing or that they're being legislated against. It's just people genuinely don't like these people. So, they're exercising their voice in...
Well, I took part in a conversation momentarily comparing the situation with the left and the right, and there was a guy who was defending the kind of modern conservatives part by citing actions of the far left. And it's like I pointed out, it's like, well, surely that doesn't make sense to compare modern conservatives and the far left. You'd be better off comparing the far left with the far right, or sort of moderate left, moderate socialists with modern conservatives, rather than, although modern conservatives are kind of edging further right anyway, aren't they? But
modern conservatives are far right.
Well, yeah, but I mean, not as, maybe ideologically, they haven't managed to actually enact as far right as fascism, like Nazism, I mean, yet, but kind of.
Literally in the last couple of months, we, as a country, or the Tories specifically, voted against the genocide amendment, which would stop us from trading with countries that are actively committing genocides. Why?
I don't know. I didn't vote for it. It's probably something to do with oil or money or weapons or something. Maybe we sell them the weapons.
Relatively recently, I think we might have gone over this before, voted to turn away child refugees.
Well, no, my brain's gone. No, it's gone. It's just, there's no, I don't know, it's just like, it's a worrying time, isn't it?
And it just seems this weird thing where, because vaccinations have started, they're immediately clamouring for like pubs to open because apparently that's the lifeblood of British society.
Who are they though that's clamouring for that?
Backbencher Tory MPs and random people they choose to interview on the street.
Backbenchers are usually the kind of rebels of the party, aren't they? But are they the like sort of further right part of the Conservative Party? The backbenchers. I feel like the front benchers try to make it look as though they're reasonable.
They've got more eyes on them, I suppose, but it doesn't mean they actually do their job. You look up like half the ministers in our cabinet right now, and they probably had at least 2 scandals in the last year.
Don't understand. I don't understand where we're going as a country. Like, has it got worse? I feel like I don't know. I feel like everyone's looking at it saying it's got worse, but has it? Is it? I mean, for a long time I've been sort of trying to pretend that it's maybe just because it's covered so much 24 hours a day now in the media when we only used to get exposed to it once or twice a day. But
the longer these incompetent vultures have control of the government, the worse things are going to get, and that has been a steady decline since 2010, at least, if not before then.
They've got at least, is it 3.5 years left?
It depends if they call a snap election or something, because that's what like half the last prime ministers have done.
But why would they need to do that? I mean, what makes me laugh is that there is that kind of because they're making a success of the vaccination part of things, that's what people will remember. But it's like, as of yesterday, I think it was 120,000. It was only 3 weeks ago that we topped 100,000. We're up to 120,000 now. It's you know, and it's not like you can. People can try and say, "Oh, well, yeah, but it's a situation that we've never been through before, and everyone's just doing their best, and it's really difficult." And it's like, well, yeah,
some governments are definitely doing their best.
There's only so much time you can spend looking at people making an absolute clusterfuck of every decision that they make, and still claim that they're just trying their best.
There are genuinely people that seem to believe there is someone that could have done a worse job, and like that. Oh, if Corbyn was in now, we'd all be dead. But like, no.
Based on what though? What are they? What is
based that? On their weird, twisted fantasies of like villainizing just like someone with principles. It seems.
I mean, there's a chance that every school kid that's struggling to get online for classes would have had free internet.
Yeah, or the health system might actually been adequately propped up, and nurses might have gotten a pay increase.
And private companies that have no fucking idea what they're doing wouldn't have been handed contracts without any proper scrutiny.
And we would have been shoehorned into a Brexit deal at the last minute, most likely. Although it depends, they were kind of on the fence with that.
I feel like we're being super critical today, but
yeah,
not enough. Not enough.
The Tories, they all.
I don't like politics though. Well, I tell you what, I don't mind politics.
Tell you what, some good news.
What?
Some good news. Rush Limbaugh is dead.
Who the fuck's that?
He's a conservative, like American media sort of. I mean, he's often like quoted as like around his death as being like this massively influential figure, but in a very bad way.
Oh, I've never heard of him. But I'm not
to give you a sort of context of the sort of person we're dealing with here, briefly at the start of the AIDS epidemic, he had a regular segment celebrating the deaths of victims of AIDS.
Yeah, that sounds quite kind of 80s.
He's genuinely a horrible person, and I'm glad he's dead.
There was a guy, I think it was earlier at the beginning of last week, that was being featured on the news who was having his his military decorations reinstated and an apology given because in 1998... having saved countless lives and been given military awards for bravery, he was dismissed from the army because they found out he was gay. took all his medals off him.
Yep.
A war hero. It's like, this is 1998. You know, I know that's before you were born, but it's like, you know, I was like in my late 20s. That's not good enough, world. Get a fucking grip.
Yeah, legally in the UK, if you've had, if you're bisexual or homosexual and have had sex with the same sex in the last 6 months, you still can't donate blood, even though they can test for things like that, and they should do.
I can't donate
with all blood.
Yeah, they should anyway. Yeah, but I can't donate blood anyway because of my lymphoma.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it's a pain in the arse. Well, it's not a pain in the arse because you don't give blood through your arse unless you have more than lymphoma to worry about.
It's the juiciest part of the body.
I was practicing for our podcast this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
You actually put thought into this?
No, I was going through guilt. Well, I kind of go through guilt every day.
Oh, this is going to be one of the depressing episodes.
Well, it's one of those things I wrestle with. You see, one of the decisions I've made, which I've very much enjoyed the fruits of over the last few weeks, is that no matter what else happens, I'm kind of trying to discipline my life in a better way mentally. And I've got a new treadmill that I'm going to be starting to work out on tomorrow because I'm a fat bastard at the moment. Lockdown belly has...
Yeah, baby.
Oh, we got a tub of ice cream downstairs. Anyway,
I don't think that's gonna help.
Yeah, but it's not tomorrow yet. So yeah,
flawless logic.
In the vein of trying to be mentally healthy, I have decided that it's a good idea to just have one complete day off from work a week. So I'd kind of decided to make Sundays, however difficult it is for me to do, and I have found it quite difficult because of feeling guilty to actually I've found I've had to actually discipline myself to not do any work, like in terms of uni work or music work or even practicing. I'm just like taking a whole complete day off, and I haven't actually managed it today. I did do some work on uni stuff today, so I failed today. But the thing is, it's that agonizing of like, what should I be doing? What should I be getting on with? What am I not doing that I should be doing? And what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing? And you're obviously dying to tell us something, aren't you?
No, I should not.
You shouldn't, but you're obviously dying to.
Well, the other thing that I feel slightly guilty about this week is I've been struggling to get lectures watched on time. I've still got, I think, 2 from this week that I'm going to have to just move to the next week, and I'll have just as many lectures to watch next week. So,
I mean, any of the time that you're staying up late at night, are you actually doing lectures or anything, or is it just during the day that you do uni work?
Once or twice, but I tend to try not to because otherwise I really won't be able to concentrate on it.
Yeah.
Generally, if it's during the week, I'm not staying up that late. It depends, but
it's a weird one. And it's doubly weird because, I mean, doing all of this from home, obviously it's completely different to how it would be if we were allowed in on campus and that. But so, I mean, I've never been a university student anyway, although I have done further education, so I have some idea of. But it's a bit like that thing of if you run your own business and work from home, it's a really difficult line to tread between your sort of work-life balance. People who work from home tend to work longer hours than people who go out to do a job, because it's like you're never away from work, and you feel you do have a certain amount of when you sit down to. It's weird because you take the guilt with you everywhere you go. When I sit down to work or to practice or to do stuff which I tend to do in my room. Obviously, you're not really supposed to have your sort of sleeping spaces mixed with work, but you don't really have a choice. You feel guilty because you're not doing the washing up or cleaning the bathroom or hoovering or doing all the other stuff that needs. I know you don't, but but I do.
It's just I don't then have them. Well, I do wash up and dry up.
Yeah, I know, but you don't. It's kind of. I bet you don't feel guilty for not like sort of. I bet you don't feel as guilty as I do for not doing stuff.
Oh, is it a competition?
No. No, you. All right, what do you feel guilty about then? Because like when I'm doing the housework and stuff, I feel guilty because I'm not working or practicing. A musician always feels guilty when they're not practicing. It's a pain in the arse. Especially when you play 3 instruments.
I mean, yeah, I just like not doing uni work when it's when it's like it's an unreasonable expectation of myself, and then I'm just like, well, how are other people managing then?
Do you know, like, I think with everything else, same with everything else, though, I think it's about balance. Because you're going to feel guilt. Whatever you're doing, you're going to feel guilt that you're not doing something else that you should be doing. But at the same time, you can't be always doing everything. So it's kind of finding a balance that you can be happy with. Being realistic with your goals and stuff. I mean, I expect there's a lot of people feeling guilty at the moment about not necessarily being in touch with people remotely as much as they could be. Because
there are quite a few family members that I haven't talked to in like months.
But what can you do? I mean, it's like there's only so many times you can say, we miss you and we'll see you when all this is over. It's like everybody's just got their head down and they're just getting on with it now. It's kind of... Yeah, I mean, I do speak to Nan occasionally. I was playing Xbox with Iena earlier on online. We were playing Aragami, that game I was playing yesterday. She was much better at it than me, even though she'd never played it before.
Yes, I would expect that, to be honest.
But
that's not a particular compliment to her.
But you know that there's loads of people that are just kind of, I wouldn't say stuck at home, because I mean, for people that live on their own, then obviously it is kind of stuck at home. But if you're stuck with people that you, I mean, I sound like I'm talking about us, but I mean, really, in a way, we're quite lucky. We tend to give each other space, don't we? And we're lucky enough to live in a house where we can do that, where we've each got a room that we can retreat to if we need some time on our own. We've got a communal space, and that we've also kind of got a bit of respect for each other, and we don't
our own ways.
We don't expect to be in each other's pockets all the time. I mean, we can spend pretty much a whole day apart in the same house and not be insulted by it.
I have felt guilty about a bit, like not getting out of my room to talk to either of you sometimes.
But there's two sides to that, because we between the three of us, we've got different dynamics going on, where you and I spend time together doing this and the channel. Me and Mum, when you're in your room, obviously we know you've got a lot of work to do, and we can hear when you're practicing, and in the morning you're probably asleep, but unless you've got lectures.
Or I've drunk heavily and I'm awoken by the sense of nausea.
I think we're all happy enough and content enough and secure enough in our own company to be able to make use of what time we've got wherever we are, whoever we're with. And that, I've got programs I'll sit and watch with Mum. We do this kind of thing together, and then when we've finished, we'll watch our programs probably. But any of us can be on our own, either in our rooms or downstairs in the main living room, and find something to keep ourselves entertained and not need.
Yeah, I think we're quite lucky in that I think we're all at least moderately introverted. I mean, I think everyone's suffered to some extent of like lack of social interaction, but that's not
one of the things
do with being introverted necessarily.
But one of the things I'm finding myself most anxious about is how to go out into society again, how to, when things do start returning to normal, how to deal with having to go out and be with people again, because
generally, from my perspective of
I don't
being
like people
horribly, horribly awkward, and I don't know how awkward you are, like internally, because
internally very,
but
I compensate.
I find it easier to meet people online, but I feel like I am missing that sort of more personal interaction with people that I have gotten to know over like the past half a year.
Well, that's the weird thing. I mean, we do, for those who don't know, and some of them might be listening actually, we both do one of the clubs together, don't we? We do Bridge Club at uni. And there's people who I would consider to be friends now on there that I've never met. And it's like, you don't know what, I mean, you kind of hope that you're going to get along with them in real person as well. Sorry, I'm making squeaky noises on my chair. Real person, in person as well. But you might meet them and think, fucking hell, they're a knob. It's like...
Is this directed at anyone in particular?
No, Tom, don't worry. It's not you I'm talking about. No, I'm not talking about anyone in particular. But you know what I mean? You don't know. It's just kind of... I didn't mean to pick anyone's name out there, but I felt that he would probably be the least insulted by it. So,
okay, right. Moving swiftly on before you incriminate yourself.
No, they're a good laugh. They're good people. But I mean, it's the same with people that I'm sort of getting to know in my classes as well. It's like, I mean, it's a bit different for me because I'm nearly 50. I'm going to be 50 this year. It's like I don't have to worry about upsetting younger people because they could just see me as a grumpy old bastard and it won't really affect me. But it's like, if they were more my age, if I was like in my early 20s or whatever, I might be more concerned about what other people thought of me. I don't know.
Yeah, I've not really made that many friends like within my degree program.
There's a bit of safety in the age barrier.
I kind of have that like to a lesser extent the other way around as well with some people, because I'm still under 18, so that scares a few people when they meet me.
Well, in some ways that could have worked. This situation could have worked slightly in your favour because you might have been in a situation where all your mates were going out to the pub and you technically couldn't really join them without kind of...
be smuggled in.
Yeah. But by the time... I mean, I think it's going to be September, by the time we're sort of fully on campus at the earliest. Might be lucky to get partially on, but... Oh, did you know there's a Hollywood film being filmed in the building you go into your classes for at the moment? The zoology building.
Really?
Yeah, it's all been on the news. It's Taron Egerton's filming a movie called Tetris.
I did see that Taron Egerton was in Aberdeen, but I didn't know it was
it's all this
that
week,
building specifically.
They're filming. They've been filming all over the weekend outside the zoology building because it's the reason being that they thought it was a good
ugly
fit
building. Though.
I know it's a good fit for Cold War era Russia.
That's true.
It's really bleak 80s.
It is. I mean, I like the inside because it's got like a cool museum
the bit opposite the
labs, but it is genuinely probably the ugliest building on campus.
Do you actually know where Nienna lives?
Vaguely.
Yeah. Do you know where the college is? North East Scotland College.
Yeah.
Just opposite side of the road there, the big high-rise flats. They're filming there for the next until like Thursday. The road's completely closed off because they're filming. So there's all these like sort of 80s kind of old cars been offloaded off of a car transporter, like larders and stuff, and it's just
it's nice to know that Aberdeen is so depressing it looks like
Cold War Russia. Yeah. So yeah, that's fun.
There's a certain bleak beauty to it, I suppose.
Yeah.
It is a bit austere. when you're not used to it.
I did think when I first moved up here, I thought it was really, really grey. And I think it doesn't help with there being so much less daylight in the winter.
Genuinely, the most colourful thing in Aberdeen are the gay steps, which is why they've become a monument.
Is that outside the Nicholas Centre? Yeah.
I think it's the Monacord Centre now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they've changed their name to shake things up a bit. I mean, this is really global content, this, isn't it? I mean, really...
Well, we have our breaking borders for that.
We do. Let's get local. I sent Craig a picture of our Chinese takeaway the other day.
Oh.
He said it looked very Scottish.
You're sending love letters.
No, that's called Rainbow as well.
Yeah.
Rainbow Chinese. For fuck's sake, let's find something interesting to talk about.
The subject of the podcast.
Guilt. So, I mean, what is guilt? Because if you in a court case, like when the jury returns a verdict of guilty, basically what they're saying is we believe this person did this thing wrong. So basically, guilt is about someone believing that someone has done something wrong.
Right, but there's also a sort of precedent there of how responsible could they really be held for what they did wrong.
Yeah, but that gets philosophical because it's like, how responsible can anyone be?
Let's get philosophical.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I know looking back of things that I've done in my life that I suppose traditionally you might say you feel guilty for, but at no point in my life have I not been doing my best at being me. I don't know if it doesn't really make any sense. What is you've got to have a code of ethics to contravene before you can have a concept of guilt, haven't you? There's got to be a set of... Is guilt purely to do with the law, or is it a moral and ethical thing? Because if you're talking about morality and ethics, it's kind of, that's a personal...
The problem with coming at it from a legal point is, I think they sort of call it bright lines, where they have to be very absolute with their judgments, whereas morality quite often, in like a practical sense, has quite a few grey areas, as I'm sure you'll be aware from your own life and plenty of examples.
But there's an interesting juxtaposition there, because while you say that there's a grey area, there are grey areas in morality and ethics, and there might be clearly defined lines under law. The clearly defined lines under law change. So what at one time, literally, you can do something on one day and be guilty, and the next day do the same thing and you're not guilty. But it doesn't change that you were guilty on the previous day. Do you know what I mean? Even if the law has changed, you were still guilty of breaking the law at that time.
Or the other way round, where new laws come into being and we examine the actions of people in the past, and by our current standards, then their actions would be considered immoral reasonably. Perhaps they should still be considered immoral, if not illegal. Yeah.
I suppose the thing with the law is you can't, I don't believe, fairly. You can morally and ethically judge someone if you choose to, but legally, it's clearly defined, isn't it? If you break the law today, but that law wasn't in place a week ago, and you'd done the same thing then you weren't breaking the law.
Which particularly gets interesting right now when laws are changing quite rapidly, and you could reasonably place some responsibility, even if that isn't in law, on certain actors during this pandemic.
Well, I mean, I know it's it's a dangerous time, isn't it? I mean, it's a time when you could smuggle all sorts of stuff under the radar when, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but you know, when you find it could be illegal to actually go outside or to meet someone. And it literally is, you know. I mean, I would be surprised if the vast majority of the country haven't broken the law in some way with regards to lockdown and social distancing rules. Whether it's a case of them just thinking that it's a waste of time and just completely flouting them, or just kind of bending the rules a bit. It's kind of...
I think there definitely is probably a smaller subset of people that are just very flippant of the advice that they've been given and of the warnings that they've been given, but I think it's probably more a case of either not fully understanding or not fully appreciating the sort of seriousness of that. But there's always going to be situations where people who fully appreciate the dangers and understand that, but just weigh their personal benefits of whatever way they're going to bend the rules as higher for whatever reason.
I'd like to get very philosophical and take guilt right back to original sin.
Oh no, we're going to talk about religion.
No, well, no, yes and no. I think I'd like to talk about the concept that religion has, or I don't know. Basically,
that I wasn't sure what the fuck you were talking about because I'm not.
Do you know what original sin is?
Is it like the idea that you're sort of born into, like you're born sort of imperfect and impure, and
possibly is. I mean, I might have got it wrong. What I was actually referring to, though, was the Garden of Eden and the banishment from paradise.
I find it really sort of a sort of self-defeating argument from a biblical thing of saying that eating, really, I suppose
it's metaphorical.
Yeah, but learning about good and evil is seen as some damning thing.
Well, the thing I take from it as a non-religious person is that paradise is a state of mind. It's existing in bliss, basically, in absolute bliss, where there's nothing wrong at all. You know, it's a perfect state of existence. But the concept of knowing that there is such a thing as right and wrong or good and evil kind of destroys that.
I'd rather be free in agony than imprisoned in my own ignorance.
Right.
And that's what I feel like I would say if I had a choice, which I really don't, but...
That's interesting you say that, because when you say you really don't, because that's the whole excuse that religious people give for the imperfection of the world, is that it is the freedom of choice that makes it imperfect. Like, it's difficult to describe. What do you think you don't have the freedom of choice over? When you were saying then,
what do you mean?
You just said that you don't feel like you have the choice.
Well, I couldn't choose to live my life happily just because I don't know the stuff that would make me unhappy.
Right. Okay.
Because the knowledge of that's not really within my control. It's everywhere.
What about
I would have to willfully ignore it.
Yeah.
Which is something I feel unable to do.
That's interesting. What is it about? Oh well, it depends what you mean by ignore, doesn't it? I mean, ignorance to me is I said an interesting word, that actually, because that the word ignore implies that you're aware of something but choose not to pay any attention to it. Whereas it is feasible to put yourself in a position where something which is damaging you is something that you're not in a position to be aware of anymore. For instance, if I bring up the option of never watching the news because it makes you mentally ill to watch it or to take it in, is that necessarily a bad thing? Because there is that argument that there is a social responsibility to keep yourself aware of what's going on, because you might need to help other people who are suffering because of what's going on in the world. And
there are other ways to obtain information that you don't have to watch just the big
but for instance, a hermit,
thing.
Somebody who decides to shut themselves off from society because it makes them unwell. They can't cope with modern day humanity. Do you think that they're doing something wrong?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's they're not going to help that many other people in that way, but yeah, I understand it.
Do you think people like us who accept that climate change is an issue should feel guilty for not taking part in civil disobedience?
See, then we get into
and not becoming vegan.
We get into sort of a mourning of lost potential, I suppose, if that makes sense.
I mean, I have a real double-think situation going on with climate change and eating meat. And I think probably a lot of people do. I'll bet there's a lot of people that would prefer to shell out for an electric car than to give up eating meat, even though that would probably have a better effect on the environment. Pardon me. I'm not trying to lecture anyone, because I've done it. I spent a few months.
It's the best thing an individual, I think, can do against climate change. Aside from making groundbreaking discoveries, the average everyday person's not going to be able to do that realistically. So in terms of what just a regular person despairing at the state of basically us hurtling rapidly into an ongoing mass extinction event.
Nice. Sorry. It was just the way that you said that. It was like, I can't argue with it.
No,
it's kind of true.
So this is something that I've sort of found out in my degree, is that, I mean, it's been going on for quite a while now. These mass extinction events, they're not these big, bang, all the dinosaurs are gone kind of thing. Like, most of them probably died of climate change after the meteor impact.
Yeah, yeah.
Or sea level rises, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose any of us that grew up in the 80s would kind of know that the vast majority of the human race that survived the initial nuclear holocaust would die out in the nuclear winter afterwards. Yeah,
and that would happen with all life, and we have this sort of, I think you're possibly aware that cockroaches might be able to survive that.
Yeah.
After that, you would probably get a radiation of cockroaches. Not radiation as in nuclear radiation, but as in radiation of cockroaches are the new form of life.
Yeah.
Deal with it, or life has to come from this now.
Yeah. Very Kafkaesque.
In more ways than one. But yeah, it's sort of, if you're looking at that, then the best way, and I think it cuts your emissions personally down about a third, is going vegan. And that's mainly to do with like energy use, principally, because you lose energy on every level of the food chain.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it really depends to a certain extent on how much money you've got as well, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who would rather pay extra for a flight to offset their carbon footprint than go without that flight if they're going on holiday somewhere, or go without that holiday. But there are people who can only afford the budget flight kind of option, who are going to go without a holiday if they don't take that option. There's probably a lot more of those. It's like the developing world and the third world are the ones that can't afford to make the change, and they're the ones that are going to suffer the most.
Yeah, I have seen that quite a lot, especially with like the way that we do fishing in a lot of countries. Like up here, we've overfished a lot of populations around the UK to the point where they just stopped coming back sometimes. And there's nothing we can really do other than wait for that to fix itself.
Yeah.
Which it might not do. But at the same time, you have whole masses of populations on coastlines that are reliant on fishing. And so you have this sort of balance of, well, leave that to the people that need it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point, a lot of our fish is even farmed because they just don't occur wildly anymore, at least not in very high numbers.
Yeah. It's weird. Guilt's a weird thing. I mean, I think it's something which is a state of mind that can become quite skewed. I think it's very closely linked to mental health.
But with regards to your sort of initial question, I guess, I don't think you should feel necessarily guilty for not going vegan. Partially because I'd be a hypocrite to say that, but I think generally a good principle to go by is take what you need and give what you can.
I suppose that sort of highlights two distinct kind of aspects of guilt then, is that because I was thinking, okay, you can't condemn anyone for that because, like you say, you'd be hypocritical, but there are plenty of people who from their standpoint could point the finger and say, well, you're not doing everything you can because I am. And it's like you're then judging other people by your own standards. But then there's the other kind of guilt where you put pressure on yourself to be something that you're not.
But I mean, you could say that about really any injustice that you aren't actively fighting against.
Yeah.
Like,
and part of it is you've kind of got,
for example, I imagine you have at some point felt at least some despair over the refugee crisis, at least like 5 years ago, thereabouts.
Yeah.
But how much realistically, I mean, you might have given money, but I don't know. I haven't really. I did think about like joining. I think it's is it Yadam? I cannot remember. There
seem to be outbursts or outpourings of public kind of remorse that are expressed and then go away, like Live Aid. And then there was the Make Poverty History movement, and to a certain extent there was the Extinction Rebellion protests. There was a lot of people that joined in on that.
Because on a large scale, endless despair isn't very sustainable.
Yeah.
Which is why like activist movements like this sort of have to thrive on the little progress they can make.
But what you need is systemic change, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of but it's something that we get quite a lot around, like pride, of like whether it should be more of a celebration or a protest.
Do you know what I realised, or kind of, I suppose I kind of deep down probably knew, but something that I recognised consciously and thought, yeah, that's cool. That is that the plus part of LGBTQ plus is that's everyone. It's like no one has to miss out on the fun. You know, the plus part is all that aren't covered by the LGBTQIA bit.
Yeah,
it's everyone else. So
it's sort of to encompass anyone who falls under that just quite loose umbrella.
If you're feeling threatened by the LGBTQ movement, like sort of establishing themselves as a thing, they've kind of included you as well because you're a plus.
I don't think necessarily in the way that you're meaning.
You don't think heterosexual is allowed in the Pride movement?
Not really. It's part of like LGBT issues.
No. What about transsexuals?
Oh yeah, I suppose, yeah. But it's sort of to the point where like there are intersections there of like different groups that might be included under that would be more people that you think, but in the way I thought you meant, I don't think so. Although some people have suggested like including allies in that, but at that point it just feels like anyone who's vaguely supportive is part of that.
Yeah. It's a weird word, allies, isn't it? Because it kind of, I mean, maybe quite rightly, but it kind of implies war. Whereas I feel like I don't feel like threatened, like as in by an enemy. It feels like allies are kind of, yeah, I know there is a fight to kind of, a metaphorical fight if you like, but it's a bit, for me, and it's more in the same vein as the fight that the hippies had against war, is that it's not fought with malice. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah, it's fought with love.
Yeah.
Sort of for love, but I think different people have different fights for different reasons.
Yeah.
But really, within that, like, the best weapon there is our voice, because otherwise we're quite outnumbered or outarmed, I suppose.
But it's like, it's difficult. Again, it's systemic change that's needed, because all the people that are in power, they might be the minority in numbers, but they're the ones that call the shots, and they're the ones that pull the strings, and they're the ones that have the money. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm getting less and less interested in the way the world is and just getting on with my own life. But it's kind of, there's only so far that you can allow that to be the case before they will all come for you. You know what I mean? It's like you can retreat into your own life and just try to make the best of things and be happy with the way the world is for you for a certain amount of time. But if everybody does that, sooner or later, the fist is going to clench on everyone, because nobody's fighting back. There'll
always be people fighting back. I mean, what I'd say for the sort of issues that you can maybe afford not to pay attention to, at least initially, try and think about them, try and sort of learn about them, and do what you can. But we've all got our own problems as well, so it's kind of a complicated thing of like, no one should really be put down upon unless they have quite a lot of power to do things, which most people don't.
I mean, I don't. I don't want to give up on any of this, but it's like the younger you are, I think the more energy and fight that you have. I don't know. I'm going to come across as sounding really old, but I mean, I'm nearly 50.
I can get
the older you get, or the older I get, the more I'm likely to just want to make the most of life, because it's like time's slipping away. You've only got so many years, and do you really want to spend your whole life just fighting the system?
I mean, I think that would be a life well spent for my part, but it might not be a happy one.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's this ignorance is bliss kind of argument. It's like kind of that doesn't mean that it's something you would want, though, does it? It might be easier to just turn a blind eye to everything and live your own life, but
it's a gift and a curse.
Yeah. And it's I think I kind of see that in the same way as from an artist's point of view, from a musician's point of view. There are rewards for it, I feel like a lot of the more painful experiences I've been through emotionally in my life have made my ability to emote much better, much deeper. And it's almost like suffering breeds art. Do you know what I mean? Like,
to some extent.
But that doesn't kind of justify it. It makes you wonder, though, if we lived in a perfect world, whatever that might be, wonder what art would look like, what music and drama and all that. Because a lot of it is about politics and suffering, isn't it?
Hot take here. Hot take.
What's that mean?
Spiciness. I don't know. I don't think a perfect world can or should exist. I don't think it's something good to strive for, and I think the attempts to make the world perfect have normally resulted in trying to basically beat it into being perfect.
Yeah.
Which, surprisingly, that makes things worse.
I'll tell you what, I have numerous not uncomfortable, but agreeable, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, poignant moments when I was watching an episode of Mandalorian with my wife today, and there was this speech. It basically, do you know when the Mandalorian set in the Star Wars timeline?
Vaguely.
It's after Return of the Jedi, but before.
Oh right, I thought it was before everything.
No, it's before the Rise of the New Order. So there is all of that kind of the bit I'm on at the moment. Spoilers. The Empire are just kind of regrouping and kind of exerting their influence, if you like. And there was this whole thing about the normal people that suffer in these political struggles, the people that end up being killed, the kind of the collateral damage, if you like. The people that are just trying to go about their lives.
Speaking of that, we haven't talked about America today. Texas, at least especially, was having power cuts, and
they've had a disaster.
People were freezing to death, and their government abandoned them.
Yeah, they've they declared a national disaster,
and then went on holiday to Mexico.
Who did? Who went on holiday to Mexico?
Ted Cruz.
Who's Ted Cruz again? I've heard the name.
He's one of the senators for Texas, I think.
Oh, right, okay. Do they count as government, state, kind of?
Yeah, in America they are very much like they have a lot more power than like Aberdeenshire Council would have.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I never kind of know how to think of the states because they're not counties, are they?
Think of it more like how Scotland's different to England.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it would be like Nicola Sturgeon fucking off when Scotland's kind of.
Yeah. Like imagine thousands of people freezing to death because of power cuts, and she just fucked off to Norway.
Well, I mean, it would be more fucked off to Africa or something, wouldn't it? Somewhere hot.
Well, it's
Norway's going to be
equivalent
frozen.
distance.
Yeah. But funny enough, I was thinking about Texas earlier on because I mean, there is. I am in no way in the same kind of vein as people who want the oil industry to continue, but seeing some of the people in Texas being interviewed, it's like there is
they kept blaming that on renewable energies, despite the fact that they only make up about 8% of the power grid.
Blaming what?
The power cuts on renewable energy.
Okay.
Despite the fact that far more reliable on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Reliant on fossil fuels. Which are actually fueling the polar vortexes that are killing them.
Yeah. It's weird though. I mean, like, because I mean, there is a tension between the everyday needs of a worker who's in a job in the oil industry. I mean, we've had it around here over the last few years. The oil industry's pretty much died on its feet around Aberdeen area, and it does affect everything in the area. No, that's not
rely on them in the first place. Then,
yeah, but that's like. But what do you do when you're in that situation? You can't turn the clock back.
Invest in retraining programs, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're doing. You know, a lot of the engineers are kind of now employed in the renewables industry and doing like, you know, the wind turbines and stuff like that, and subsea stuff that's to do with the offshore wind turbines and stuff like that, and also decommissioning oil rigs and stuff like that, and that will come to an end.
That's like half of what the oil industry is nowadays around here.
Yeah. But I know for a fact that downturn has had a massive effect on, for instance, the wedding industry. You know, where 10 years ago I'd have been gigging at least once every weekend, sometimes twice, and sometimes even 3 times. Whereas now you're lucky to get that a month. Well, you don't get anything at the moment with COVID, but you know, this time last year it was like 1 or 2 a month if we were lucky. But I wouldn't want to perpetuate the oil industry in order to avoid that, because, you know, some people just whinge too much. It's like, get the fuck on with it. It's like, this is what's happening.
It's an interesting
It's going to be difficult for some people, but just get on with it.
It's an interesting area to live in, because our main sort of economic boosts around here are oil, beef, or whiskey.
Mm.
None of which have like a particularly great effect. I mean, whiskey arguably less so, but it depends.
I've seen a bottle of whiskey with a £10,000 price tag on it.
Ah, Jesus. Yeah, no, that annoys me. But the point I wanted to make about...
When you say it annoys you, what annoys you about it?
The point I wanted to make about Texas is people seemingly blaming that on the people of Texas for voting for a Republican government, despite the fact that quite a lot of them didn't. But that's just America being very hyper-partisan stuff. Anyway, what did you say?
What is it that annoys you about a £10,000 bottle of whiskey?
It's just disgusting opulence.
But yeah, but I mean, it's the price tag isn't extortion for what has been involved in producing it. That whiskey in that bottle has
a waste of money though.
But it's sat in a barrel for 70 years. So that barrel has had to be maintained for like a lifetime, basically, and not moved, cared for 70 years. And then, even then, more than half of it has evaporated by the time it's kind of got to the bottling process.
Okay, so you've spent all that time caring for this liquid that's literally going to last you, what? I mean, it depends how slowly you want to drink it, but
I would imagine very slowly. But
yeah,
I'll say I've had some.
It's not good value for money, I don't think.
No, I'm trying to think what the oldest bottle of whiskey I've had. I mean, I've had a few 12-year-olds whiskies.
Whoa.
I think I've had an 18.
This wasn't the guilt that I was talking about.
No, I'm not that bad. 18 is probably the oldest whiskey I've had. And that for us would be relatively expensive. I mean,
just pop down to Tesco, get the value stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a bit like anything with where money's involved. Is there's a law of diminishing returns. It is a 12-year-old whiskey is much nicer than a 3-year-old blended. A 12-year-old single malt just tastes.
Why are you blending 3-year-olds?
I mean, such as like Bell's, Bell's whiskey or Teachers, kind of just the cheap stuff, the value
Teachers,
stuff.
kind of.
Teachers is a brand of whiskey.
Wonder why.
But the cheap stuff, it's cheap for a reason.
But whiskey's fucking nasty.
It is though that the more time you spend on it, the more there's diminishing returns. It's like spending a couple of £100 on a stereo system,
Like
or a couple of thousand. It's like there is an
buy like a
improvement.
grand piano or something. At least you'd get more use out of it.
Well, where the fuck are you going to keep it?
Well, if you have £10,000 to spend on a fucking bottle of whiskey, I'm sure
You wouldn't get a
grand piano.
You wouldn't get a very good grand piano for that money.
Well, you have that disposable income. You probably have enough to get a grand piano.
What if you don't play the piano?
Learn.
I'm not going to spend. Why are we having a conversation? I'm not going to spend 10 grand on a bottle of whiskey.
No, but I find it stupid that people put this much value on what is essentially poison.
Well, I think because there's been a lot of interest. I think they do a lot of their own stuff now, but that was a massive pull in the tourist industry for the Japanese were really into whiskey, and they come here on holiday. There's when I used to deliver luggage to hotels and stuff around the northeast, I used to quite often go into. There was a hotel in, I think it's Keith. It's near the Chivas Regal distillery. And you go in there and there's a cabinet in the reception area with antique bottles of whiskey, just like, and they become a commodity. They become like a status symbol.
But I feel like that's kind of offset by having to go to Keith.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it, really?
Like, sure, you're drinking very nice whiskey, but you're in Keith, mate. Like, you're not having the time of your life.
Just for anyone who doesn't know the local area, there's a town near us called Keith.
I don't actually know if I've ever been. I just know there's a lot of jokes about it.
You've been through it because you've been up to Inverness Airport.
I don't remember that. I must have blocked it out of my memory.
Pretty sure. Yeah, because, I don't know.
Not recently, certainly.
No. I've just got the deck chair song. Deck chair song? What is it called? The chicken song. Is that what it's called? The Spitting Image song.
What the fuck are you talking
Hold a chicken in the air, stick a deck chair up your nose. Oh, what's it called?
Why is this relevant?
Because the last line of the first verse is pretend your name is Keith.
Oh.
And there we go.
Was very guilty.
Yeah, we're supposed to be talking about guilt, aren't we?
Well,
what's the one thing you've done in life that you feel most guilty about?
That I'm willing to share on here. Stole, I think, around maybe up to £200 from you guys to spend on microtransactions.
Oh,
because,
yeah, I remember that. Sorry.
And I'm going to use this to make a point. Those games have predatory gambling practices that draw in children and should be banned.
Yeah, but the thing is, how long was it before you came and told us about it? Or did you get found out?
I think Mum would have suspected for quite a while, but I did try and pretend that the thing got hacked. I don't remember for how long.
Yeah, that was when she threatened. She said about calling the police to say that there'd been a cyber crime committed, wasn't it? You saying about being hacked, and that was when you were like, "Well, actually," and owned up to it. I mean, you know, I've done worse, so. But it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
So.
I was about like 10, so.
Yeah. And now you're richer than any of us.
I am. When I do see like GoFundMe's, while I'm scrolling on Twitter, trying to give when I can, including I think I spent about like £300 on charities yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah, I just went, fuck it, have my money, I don't need it.
It's never a good idea to do that, to go online with your card when you've been drinking.
Oh, was it when I was drinking? Well, one was, but that was because they were doing a fundraiser in the event that we were having drinking games in.
Oh, right, okay, that's fair enough.
But most of it was during the morning, so. It's just random people who clearly needed help and weren't going to get it from anyone else, so.
Yeah, I mean, I take it you kind of thoroughly checking out the sources of this funding. Not funding, I mean where the money's ending up.
Not especially. I think there are systems on like GoFundMe, and I think the other one is like, I've forgotten what it's called, like crowdfunder or something, Kickstarter. I don't know, but yeah, there's various. They do have protocols for it. They like have been found to like commit fraud to get that, yeah. But I'm not that cynical with it. I find it really fucking disturbing when I found this quite a lot going into cities with older people, where just the amount of contempt they seem to have for homeless people, I don't understand it.
I don't have
it just seems
contempt for them, but
absolute distrust of what they would do with that money. It's like they're gonna use it better than me.
I don't have contempt for them, but I do probably have a learned ability to kind of turn a blind eye more than you, just simply because of having experienced so much of it.
I find it genuinely disturbing going to London and watching all the people crying out for help and everyone just walking by them. And because I'm often with people when I go to London, I kind of feel pressured to do the same.
The difficulty is that, and the reason that a lot of people just walk by is because there is so much of it that, and those, you know, like when you live and work in London, you just can't give every time you see a beggar, because you would just be giving all the time.
I mean, fair enough if you don't have enough to give, but there are definitely quite a lot of people that have to give.
Yeah.
And it's just the sort of conversations you have with people after that, and you learn a lot about them, with how they treat the people that they don't value.
The other thing is as well that, you know, for me, this kind of, they'll only spend it on alcohol or drugs or cigarettes or whatever. It's like,
I spend my money on, well,
the thing is, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
rich people spend far more, like, as a proportion of their income on alcohol and drugs than homeless people, or even just people in the bottom 20%, I think.
Obviously, it would be better to get a good warm meal, but at the end of the day, if you've got a choice between being less hungry but being aware of every second of the freezing cold night that you're going through, and loneliness and just pure self-loathing, or numbing that.
But, I mean, if my pitiful donation helps them just make it a few more days than they would without that, or even just a day more, then
I suppose
I'm happy with what I've done there.
I suppose the thing would be, I mean, really, what somebody like me should do, and you know, this would probably be a better thing to do, would be, rather than thinking I'm going to pass 10 homeless people on this stretch of road, so I can't afford to give to all of them, rather than thinking that, is, if you think I can spare a couple of quid, give them 40p each, you know, or 20p each, you know. It's like,
I think also a lot of the time, genuinely,
you don't have to give everything you can afford to everyone you see.
Like, when I've been walking around Aberdeen, quite a lot of people, like, just appreciate the fact that someone did stop, and that, you know, some sort of level of social interaction there.
Yeah, do you know what a lot of people in Aberdeen... I see this more in Aberdeen, actually, than I've seen... I mean, probably because I spent more time in Aberdeen, but people do... There are people that do tend to take the time to just stop and have a chat with them.
Yeah.
You know, which is...
And if you don't have money to give, then you can do that. I mean, I guess it kind of feels weird, especially as British people, just talking to strangers. But, like, you're probably going to have a far more honest and meaningful conversation with them than you would with a lot of your friends.
Well, they've got nothing to lose, have they? And you know, if you listen, it's kind of... I remember one night I'd been out... it was an end-of-year social meal thing with a musical group that I was involved with, and I'd split off from the rest of the group at the end of the night, sort of thing, and gone off wandering and got pissed, and I'd spent far more that evening than I would be comfortable admitting, but on the way back to my hotel afterwards, in fact, this is on one of my Better Call Paul podcasts, I interviewed a homeless person. I spoke to them. I asked them if they would mind, and they were fine with it. And I had a good chat with them, and it was really quite moving. Quite, you know,
just little acts of kindness like that will make a difference to somebody. And while in a sea of utter despair that can seem quite small to that person, like, you may have made their day, so
yeah.
It just...
Well, we all have difficult days and difficult struggles to get through and stuff like that. And so, you know, if you're feeling particularly able on a certain day, then do it. But I don't mean to count. What I'm meaning is that you don't have to be homeless and on the street to be struggling as well.
No, a lot of the people that I've given, like, to fundraisers for, it's like, they're not necessarily homeless yet, but they know that they might be kicked out because they have, like, abusive parents, and they need a fund ahead of time so that they don't die.
Yeah.
Or because they're behind on payments and are struggling to look after their kids.
This is a bit of a depressing episode so far.
But there is hope in... I mean, it's a weird feeling, because sure, you might get some thanks from them, but, like, especially when you're, like, doing it over the internet, you don't really know these people, and if you're just giving to them because... I mean, I just do it because, like, I'm scared about... I don't have that much money, but I'm scared of the amount I do have, and...
To be fair, that a lot of that is because you're living at home, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we do charge you board, but we charge a minimal amount so that you can build up a bit of a nest egg, don't we? So,
but it's better than using that as disposable income on some vacuous crap that I'm gonna just use once and forget about.
Which I've done plenty of. Although I do less now. But that's a mental health issue in itself.
I feel like that's a society-wide mental health issue.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And it's kind of indicative of the kind of state of mind that capitalism engenders, isn't it? Because there is this kind of moving money around and consumerism kind of mentality that the economy and therefore the society is only healthy when people are spending.
I mean, on a lot of this, I mean, I have I suppose a bit of an extreme view on this, but like I am staunchly anti-capitalist and an anarchist. So like earlier discussions of like talking about legal guilt, it's sort of like, I don't think that should really be a thing, at least in the way that we know it.
No, but what would you suggest?
Because I find
obviously there are actions that need to be addressed by society as a whole, I suppose. Or
I find it disturbing though that our only way of, well, our few ways of making people, or deterring people from doing things that we don't want to do, are either limiting their freedom for months or years at a time, making them do free labor, or making them pay a fine. I mean, the last one's arguably
weird,
the least insidious, but in a system where a lot of the people being given those fines are not going to be able to afford them, it's quite deliberately making it legal for rich people to do things.
So, I mean, and this is a view that I would certainly agree with. Are you of the same mind as me that the main focus, and in fact the only focus, should be on rehabilitation?
The only positive purpose prisons could serve, if they can really serve any purpose, is to rehabilitate. And at that point, it's sort of like, well, why are we thinking of this like a prison? Like,
yeah,
and
it's actually a gift rather than you're giving somebody help.
Should be like educational institutions, hospitals, but not in where people's freedoms are restricted. Rather
than seeing a criminal as somebody who takes something from society, it should be that a criminal is somebody who is unwell. Maybe has been driven to a particular state by their situation.
I mean, that's only if you actually agree that these people are rightfully convicted and that their crimes actually are deserving of any punishment, really, because most crimes aren't even violent.
But I suppose that's a difficult situation then, though, isn't it? Because you've got to kind of have some kind of moral framework within which to determine whether or not somebody needs rehabilitation, because their behaviour may well be acceptable in one society but not in another.
It should be primarily within an imperfect system, done through social work and things like, if you're addicted, there's sort of safe spaces to sort of wean yourself off things.
That all depends on the people who are running the system being safe and healthy themselves, though. It's like a social worker can do more damage than good.
That is true as well, yeah. We're all...
I'm not saying that they do in general, but being cared for isn't.
I definitely been in situations where I've thought that I needed to go to someone for help and found that they were either not really much help or were actually a hindrance.
Yeah, yeah.
At that point, it's sort of like, well, what the fuck do I do with myself then? Because I don't know who to go to.
Yeah.
I think that's just life right now, and just generally, I don't know.
I would say that you're never the only one to be going through what you're going through, though. There's always going to be someone, even if you don't know how to find them, or I mean, that cliche of you're not alone. I suppose everyone's alone, but it's kind of finding each other, I suppose, is a trick, isn't it? Finding people that understand. And sometimes you don't even need them to understand, you just need them to listen.
Yeah. I mean, getting back to the subject slightly, I guess in a kind of very fucked up religious way is kind of the idea of a confession.
What is?
Having someone to listen. Be it God or some member of the clergy as acting as an envoy to God.
I don't know what the legal situation is with confession in terms of if you confess to a crime, whether or not I
was under the impression that
or whether it's different in different countries, obviously, but
in most situations, like, that's something that's considered quite sacred, that they can't really...
Well, I'd have thought that, but then I do know for a fact that there are certain things that if you tell a medical professional, such as a psychologist or psychotherapist, that they have a legal obligation to forward that to the authorities if someone is in danger. That's the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, I kind of meant, I think it is most common in the Catholic Church, the idea of confession.
Is that a legal thing in... Because, I mean, the Catholic Church is obviously a global kind of organisation, but does whether or not a Roman Catholic priest can keep something confidential if it's if somebody is in danger, or if say for instance if somebody's murdered someone, does it depend on the country that they're in, or is it something that is, I mean, you say sacred, what does that mean under law?
Yeah, they broke the seal, from what I understand, in the Catholic Church. They'd be excommunicated unless they had specific permission. From this. I don't know how this actually works. Yeah, it requires people to testify, but confessional privilege forbids judicial inquiry in a lot of jurisdictions, I would guess. But it'll vary because it's quite a controversial thing, I suppose.
Yeah. It's,
But they do have that as well in quite a lot of places where you don't have to testify if you're married to someone.
Yeah. What do you think about that? About the situation of somebody who's a mental health professional being told something in confidence in a therapy session, having to pass that on to the authorities? I mean, under certain circumstances.
It's not really that I would per se have an issue with passing it on to someone to just like be aware of that in case something did happen. It's just I don't trust them to be able to do with what, like, responsibly. Yeah,
I was going to say, for me, the issue with that for me would be who decides what is a threat.
Because, yeah, I've definitely seen quite a lot of testimonies as well as videos of law enforcement having absolutely no clue how to deal with mental health crises, and
yeah.
I'm assuming some of the information that they've been given on like that they are some like dangerous threat is things like that, where they're under the impression, because they've been told these things about this person, or maybe they're just assholes. They probably are, but
what about I don't know whether you would call it false guilt. What about say a child whose parents have split up, who blames themselves for it? They suffer guilt, don't they?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, I guess.
Is there any mileage in that? I mean, I know under most circumstances people would say it's not your fault, but guilt can, in a lot of circumstances, can be a shared thing, can't it? That there are many different components to a situation that results in a particular outcome. While in that situation, let's say there's a particularly challenging child who's they're not legally responsible, obviously, because they're not old enough to know any better, but their behavior does have an effect on the parents.
If you are having a child, you should be able to make a commitment. I mean, there are exceptions to this where you're fucked over by external forces, and you are doing everything within your power to make this happen. But if you are having a child, you should consider to be able to provide a loving and caring environment where they can grow up.
What about if the actions that cause the problem happen after they've become an adult?
After their kids become an adult?
Yeah. Say a couple split up because they disagree on something that their kid's done who's over 18. Not, I mean, it's a very oversimplified kind of case, but you know what I mean? There can be stresses that happen. Say, I mean, I'm sure there've been plenty actually of cases of drug addiction in sort of older teenagers and young adults that put such a strain on a marriage that that marriage ends up splitting up. Where there's so much blame or guilt kind of to be shared around in that situation. How do any of the people involved in that situation deal with it? You know, I'm not expecting you to have an answer. Don't worry. It's just I'm just interested in thinking about. You know, there are so many different things at play there.
I mean, marriage generally. I like having different perspectives on things, but like from my view of things, it's sort of it feels like a very different thing to me than it is to most of the people I know that are married.
Including me.
To some extent. Probably based on like more how you were conditioned, I suppose. But also you sort of get a different perspective on like that very set idea of what you're supposed to do when
I think
you already start like breaking the rules of that.
I think the thing is, beyond the legal definitions of marriage, I think it's what the two of you in a marriage decide it is.
Yeah.
That it's a relationship. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is something that me and Mum agree on completely, is marriage is basically it's a legal piece of paper. That's all it is. Yeah. The rest of it is what you make of it, what you decide is best for you as a couple, and that's different for everyone. You know, there's no.
I mean, I can get why some people want to have like weddings and. Yeah, want to declare that very definitively, but it does put a bit of pressure on if you later decide that that's not how that's going to work for you.
To be honest, it's become less so, but until certainly when me and Mum got married, it's legally it's more it has been more convenient and easier to deal with various different things that require some kind of legal kind of
Yeah,
framework.
there are ways to like have legally recognized relationships, but it's a lot easier just to get married, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you know what I don't like about it though? And this is quite often I don't know about don't like, but I think it's very revealing. And this is often the case with terminology, is thinking about where the word comes from. If you think about the word, about the verb to mar, what does it mean to mar something?
I don't really know.
Look at what the verb to mar means. MAR, and married. It that comes from
Something to do with chaining up. I mean, you've got bloody fucking Marvel Extended Universe on here.
Yeah.
Impair the quality of appearance or appearance of, to spoil. Violence marred a number of New Year celebrations. That's an interesting example of that.
I don't know if that's where it comes from at all, but do you know what I mean? Because they often talk about like joining things together as kind of, marrying different drinks and food, don't they? A combinational mixture of elements, marriage.
They might have like a similar root, I don't know.
Yeah. But how did we get into this from guilt? Do you think
it derives from probably a different root by the looks of it?
And I'm not speaking in any way, shape, or form from any kind of. Please don't read anything into what I'm saying. But do you think that there is any guilt to be had in a relationship where a couple have been married for years and it's not necessarily an open relationship, but there's no kind of difficulty between them as a couple, as a relationship. But one of them has physical needs that the other one isn't meeting and finds them elsewhere.
As long as you've communicated that that's okay, then that's fine. But it's sort of where you've breached someone's trust in not communicating your wishes effectively, and really the key is to just talk to one another, which I find this weird thing. It's not all straight people, but the straights TM, there's particularly older marriages.
I'm thinking in terms of what might have been quite an old-fashioned way of dealing with things now, but there is this kind of concept of, it used to be quite normal for a husband to have a mistress, but the wife would generally not know about it and not want to hear about it, but not be necessarily opposed to it happening.
I mean, that's probably less to do with even having like a means to like voice their opinion there, but
yeah.
No, I was going to say this weird thing of particularly older straight couples who seem to genuinely hate one another. I don't get that, but it's sometimes sort of played off as a joke, but at times like it's fairly obvious that like they probably don't actually like each other here.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because sort of banter and just generally falling out is...
But it seems like it's expected that they wouldn't like each other.
I don't get that, because I mean, me and Mum aren't like that, are we?
No, not... Other than on like a few things that I think are just like normal human disagreements.
Yeah.
It's not like you've been jaded by years of being together.
It's going to be... Oh, fucking hell, it's our 20th wedding anniversary this year.
Oh, you're an old bastard.
Hang on. It's our 20th wedding anniversary this year. I'm going to be 50 this year. Grandad's going to be 70.
I'm going to be 18.
And we can do fuck all about it, because none of us are allowed to do anything at the moment.
Well, by December you might be able to.
What's in December?
Your anniversary.
Yeah, I suppose that's the latest. But that's the latest of the things that are happening. you know, you're going to be 18, Granddad's going to be 70, and I'm going to be 50 before that.
Don't act like I would have gone out on my birthday anyway.
You've got friends now. Who knows what would have been happening if COVID hadn't happened? You might have moved into Aberdeen by now. You might have had enough of travelling back and forth. You might have been... I'm telling you, this is how it happens, is that if you're living at home within reach of uni, you build up friendships, you'll end up just staying overnight sometime because it's easier than getting the train home. Find, actually, that was really easy, and end up it just grows. Well,
it's the difficulty of finding friends good enough that they could put up with my shit in the way that you do. Like, a friend in the way that you are.
There's a compliment in that. Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. No, like, I mean, it is a kind of sort of...
You mean you need somebody super tolerant?
I mean, I am genuinely disabled and I need people to help me.
Yeah, but don't forget that there is a two-way street there. That, I mean, I won't say that we don't put up with... To be honest, we don't put up with a huge amount that we wouldn't expect from a teenager anyway. But yeah, I know you've got your disabilities, but that's just become part of life, you know, for us. It's not like... But there are many things that need tolerating from everyday normal human beings, if that's such a thing, that are just as bad and worse.
Yeah, like all the weird, insecure things that I have that like I don't normally show to like those kinds of people that I would consider my friends, but like not that close to.
You grow to learn to hide the real you.
No, genuinely, I mean, you say that sort of half jokingly.
No,
but...
I don't. I'm quite honest. No. That's how I've survived.
Yeah, like I think everyone does it to some extent, but there is definitely a perspective of like having mental health issues, which a lot of my friends now do have. I won't like,
but it's nice talking about it openly. That like, nowadays, I think it's becoming more and more normal. I think you're actually abnormal if you don't think you've got mental health issues nowadays.
Well, yeah, at that point, you're not healthfully dealing with that.
It's almost like there's this, there's this campaign to say it's okay to not be okay has been going on. Mental health's been a big thing in Scotland. I'm not so sure how they treat it in England because the NHS have kind of driven that up here, which is separate from England and Wales. But that whole general mental health kind of focus nowadays, I do feel like it's edging more towards it's not okay to be okay. Or, well, I don't know. No, that's a bit harsh. It's more than normal. I don't know. It's normal to not be okay at the moment. I think is probably the COVID thing actually. And if you're dealing with everything that's been happening in the last year,
well, like if you're not
and you're fine
with your mental health right now, what the fuck is wrong with you? You absolute fucking psychopath.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we should be winding up fairly soon. We've nearly run out of beer. I don't know. I mean, we've talked about guilt kind of laced in with the subject, haven't we? But I feel
not what we normally do.
I feel like is this the bit where we start to give our self-appraisal of what the episode's been like?
It seems by you saying that that part has begun.
No. Actually, this is just before we get to that bit where I ask whether or not we're approaching that bit,
and then I bring up one more point.
Oh yeah, go on then. Supposed to have one pre-prepared.
Oh yeah, I wanted to.
Please don't.
I think I did briefly have a conversation with you about this.
Oh no, you're gonna. Am I going to be put in an awkward position on air now?
I don't think so.
Go on then.
I watched It's a Sin. If you haven't heard of it, it's a 5-part TV show set throughout the 80s.
Hang on just a second. Has that got in it... I'm thinking there was an actress in something that you watched recently. that I'd seen in something else that I thought, oh yeah, I didn't realise she was in it until afterwards. What was her name? Can't remember. Who's in it? What actress?
I don't think most of the actors in that are very high profile, aside from the main character, who I've forgotten the actor's name of.
Oh no, was that the one that the girl out of the Spider-Man films is in?
Oh no, that's Euphoria.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, carry on. That was another program you watched, which is also very good from what I've seen of it, but carry
on. Yeah, no, it's a sin. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, and I think it's relevant particularly to today's situation. I'll try not to spoil too much. It's set during the 80s with gay people around about the AIDS epidemic. I think it's like 5 different friends.
Oh, I told you about my experience with an AIDS victim in the 80s.
I don't think so.
Oh no, it would have been the 90s actually. It would have been early 90s.
Yeah, I think by the time there was a lot more information about it, it was getting on towards the 90s.
It was just I was on my way to... Oh, what was it? No, I don't know. I was wearing a Freddie Mercury tribute t-shirt. Tribute concert t-shirt. And I was just walking around in London on my way to a rock vocals lesson. The one that I had, and so somebody coming the other way, a complete stranger, which is, if you live in London, this is something that would stick out to you, completely notable, was for a complete stranger to actually speak to you. Somebody coming the opposite direction pointed out my t-shirt and said, "Great t-shirt, mate," as they were walking past. And it wasn't until afterwards that I just a few seconds later, I realised that they had kind of black marks all over their arm, which was one of the signs of being not. I think that's full blown AIDS. It's not just HIV positive. That's the kind of.
Well, yeah, it makes you more susceptible to getting like cancers and stuff because it's an immune thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, potentially.
And it was just like at that time, though, it was before there was any effective kind of long-term treatment or cure. So it was that realization at that moment that guy was terminally ill. You know, there was no escape for them at that point. It was like knowing that person that just.
I always find it very strange and profound, seeing how different people deal with that. But
that used to be the case with cancer. That if somebody said they had cancer, that was like you've got a death sentence.
Yeah, with the sort of cancers that they would tell you about, I guess. But I mean, there are quite a lot of benign cancers that like don't necessarily even need treatment. But it's the sort of thing. It's like, oh, if it doesn't cause any issues, then
I'm not sure if you would know about them until they became the really aggressive ones, though. Because I mean, like with my lymphoma situation, that one of the real difficulties with that is diagnosis, and fortunately, I live at a time where
was it the lump on your forehead that got your diagnosis?
No, it was long before that. It was I actually, it was in the mid-noughties that, I mean, to be honest, I've had skin problems my whole life. I used to have eczema as a kid, but when I was at college, I used to have such sore kind of eczema on my back that I would scratch it to the point where I would then be bleeding and there'd be blood under my nails and stuff. But I don't think at that point, I don't know, but I don't think at that point that it was mycosis fungoides, which is what I was eventually diagnosed with. But I went to the doctors in the mid-noughties because I just could not stop scratching, and it was stopping me sleeping at night. I had just itchy and sore, dry skin all the time. And they referred me to dermatology, who did first did blood tests and then a skin biopsy, and it was eventually diagnosed. It's really quite difficult to diagnose because it's often misdiagnosed as eczema or psoriasis, because that's the kind of early stage, that's the sort of first and second stage symptoms. So in the past, they may have treated it that way and ended up missing it until it progressed to the point where it became a more widespread cancer that isn't treatable. Sorry, I kind of interrupted there.
The point related to guilt was...
I feel guilty about that.
Again, I'm trying not to spoil too much, but around AIDS, there's this sort of thing of like, oh, if you suspect that you have AIDS, or what's your responsibility to get tested? What's your responsibility to like have safety precautions there, like with condoms and stuff? And if you know that you have AIDS or like very strongly suspect, are you killing people by having sex with them at that point? Should you feel guilty about that?
I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly in the 90s, I remember, I don't know whether or not I couldn't get life insurance or it would have cost me a lot more. I had a friend who worked as an insurance advisor, and they advised me. Basically, I've been quite naive in my life. I've not really been, compared to a lot of other people, I've never really slept around or been kind of a high risk category in terms of drug usage. I've never injected drugs or anything like that. I haven't had that many partners compared to a lot of people, but I was getting quite serious about a girl, and we were talking about getting engaged and stuff. And I, just to kind of reassure her, because she knew that I had been with other partners before, I said, well, I'll get an AIDS test just so that you know that I'm fine, sort of thing. And I did that. But then when it came to getting insurance advice in the 90s, it was the case that one of the questions on the application form was, have you ever had an AIDS test? And if you answered yes to that, I can't remember if it was that your premiums were a lot higher or you just couldn't get life insurance just because you'd had a test. Because it implied that you were in a category that needed to get a test.
Yeah, I think that's one of the sort of more sort of background parts of how capitalism instills discrimination, essentially.
But even at that point, he was saying to me that it's a stupid situation in the UK, or it was then, that at the same time in Australia, it was actually a requirement of the life insurance companies that you did get an AIDS test to get cover. Which is like, I don't know if that's worse or better or just as bad in a completely opposite way, but
I think it's good to be safe.
Yeah.
But
it's a different world now, though, isn't it? I mean,
evil.
then it was a death sentence then. You know, you didn't know how long it was going to take, but you knew it was going to kill you.
Yeah, I strongly dislike insurance companies. I feel bad for the people that call up on their behalf, because I know they're just doing a shitty job, because that's all they can really get.
Having said that, you got your gaming computer out of an insurance company.
Yeah, but they're still shit.
I mean, you put some money towards it yourself, but...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's not the argument, though.
But it's the capitalist way, isn't it? They're a company that are there to make money. And to provide profits to the shareholders. That's what our society is built
Life
on.
insurance is literally profiting off of the fear of losing your livelihood.
It's a
because someone's died.
It's a bet.
Yeah.
It's a gamble. This is Terry Pratchett in action in Sewer Ants from The Colour of Magic. It's a principle that you place a bet with someone that something's going to break, or that you're going to die, or that something bad's going to happen to you. And
so you get this situation, especially with if your company's getting life insurance for you, where it's like they'd actually make quite a lot of money off of your death.
Yeah.
Like if you're an award-winning pianist, your fingers are probably more valuable than your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an award-winning pianist, but I do have insurance through my union that if I sustained an injury that prevented me from playing the piano or the trumpet for the rest of my life, or doing music in any way, then I would get I would get paid. I would get a fair amount of money because it lost earnings. And that's just part of my union membership. But obviously, it's a basic rate. You know, if you want more, you've got to pay extra to the insurance company. Essentially, they're a bit like banks, aren't they? The whole money system's just fucked. It's like, I mean, I know some kind of trading principle is kind of a function of a society that needs to happen, but it's become such a grotesque, deformed version of anything that might be considered okay, and it's just the acceptable format that society has now.
Yeah, especially if there's a monopoly, particularly on something that people need. Then you can set the price at whatever you want, and people don't really have a choice but to pay you.
Well, I mean, that happens with OPEC, doesn't it? I mean, cartels in general are generally considered to be illegal, but the biggest one on the planet, OPEC, has been in control of the whole world economy for decades, and it's accepted as normal because they're the most powerful kind of...
I think I've heard the name, but I'm not really aware of what that is.
Well, OPEC, it's basically an organisation that, I don't know if it still exists, it's maybe worth looking up, but it used to be, certainly, an organisation of countries which fixes the price of oil.
Oh, yeah, it's... Oh.
And they control the flow of oil into the market.
I thought you meant
to manipulate
like something
the price.
that's generally called a cartel, not like what's the actual sort of...
No. OPEC is essentially a cartel of governments. That can they control the flow of oil into the global economy to manipulate the price, because basically that is the foundation of...
Just looking at all of these, it's like, these are all the places with like war and instability right now. Wonder why that might be.
Yeah.
Oh, it is officially a cartel.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's an accepted international cartel.
That's weird.
But they talk about it in terms of drug cartels. You know, when it's evil, when it's not like an accepted...
probably far more pleasant to the people they fuck over.
Yeah, I mean, it's only the entire human race's survival that we're talking about with this cartel, so, you know.
Jesus.
you just discovered OPEC, haven't you?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. You're just reading through the history of OPEC in Wikipedia. Good luck.
Okay, well...
I've just brightened your day.
Yeah. Talking about climate change earlier, I think it's important, and I find it really quite annoying the way that a lot of even things that you would normally consider to be quite reasonable talk about climate change as if it's the fault of everyday people. And sure, while population growth is a factor in that, because more people means more resources being used, the way in which we use resources is definitely not equal across the planet, and
No.
we don't share equal responsibility for that. I mean, even in fairly wealthy countries like that, like this.
If you look at somebody like me, it's like I was born into England in the 1970s. What was I supposed to do except learn to drive and you know, take part in the general kind of fossil fuel based economy that I was born into? I haven't got any influence really in political terms. I haven't got an ability to change the system.
Yeah.
Even though I've been here nearly half a decade, I haven't had the power to do that. Whereas there are people who have.
Yeah, so we get back to that thing of like, oh, the biggest individual thing you can do is become vegan. But the much better thing to do would be to slowly phase out, or I mean, honestly, quite quickly phase out agricultural industries that are polluting the planet.
Can I
and enforce strict
Can I
practices.
potentially finish on a slightly optimistic note? Are you ready to head towards that?
I don't know about that, but we'll see.
This week was introduced that the UK have brought forward their target by 10 years of banning the sales of all fossil-fuelled cars. So as of 2030, it is now going to be illegal to sell petrol and diesel-fuelled cars in the UK. It was at 2040 before.
I guess it's an improvement.
It is an improvement. I mean, I know it's...
it's too little, too late.
Yeah. But it's something that has improved in the past week.
I thought you were going to say like phasing out all fossil fuels by 2030, which would be genuinely quite good if they were actually going to stick to that.
No, they're just not allowed to sell new fossil fueled cars.
Right. So if you have like
they'll still be around for a long time after that. I mean, I'd already decided that the next time we buy a car, my choice based on current circumstances would be if we could afford it, which seems to be the case because on the back of this news item about fossil fuel cars, it was also mentioning that the electric cars are being rolled out by all the main manufacturers at all price levels. So it's not just the expensive Teslas and stuff.
It's important also within that, like, electric cars are in theory good, but if you're actually getting electricity from fossil fuels, then they're actually worse.
This is the thing. I mean, public power points I couldn't control, but we get ours from Octopus, which is
the magic space energy Octopus.
Yeah, no, our tariff
infinite
is
renewable energy from the space Octopus.
Renewable thingy bobs. But I think the best choice for us on the next car would be to get a plug-in hybrid, because hybrid in itself is good. Yes, it's an improvement, but at the same time, you're still using fossil fuels. But if you get a plug-in hybrid, you've always got the fallback, if you like, of some fuel in the tank if you go out of range. Because that's the thing at the moment, is charging is not nearly rolled out enough. I mean, most of the time, you know, the distances that I drive, it wouldn't be a problem around here. But if we were, for instance, driving down to Nans, it could be a major issue. I mean, we'd certainly have to stop for longer periods on the way. We stop quite often anyway, but we'd probably have to stop twice for at least an hour at a time, which is not a problem. I would do that, but you can't guarantee that if where you stop, there's going to be a free charging point to use.
Yeah.
At the moment. I mean, eventually, hopefully, they'll all be like that. Well, I suppose they would have to be, wouldn't they?
You would hope so.
But I do know that actually, there's two things about this that surprise me. It was in the news that I think it's around about now-ish, but it's certainly around very, very close to this time of this year, that Aberdeen City Council had announced that from a certain date, I think it was sometime in February, I'm not sure, that all their public electric car charging points were going to start charging money to charge your car, basically. Like, you'd have to pay to get to charge your car up there. But there's two things about that. It's a bad thing that you're having to pay to charge your car, but I was actually quite surprised that they weren't already doing that it was free before. I had assumed that these electric car charging points, I mean, like, I'd thought
if it was free before, what's the justification for changing that now?
I don't know. I mean, they're probably not able to impose car park charges nearly as much as they have been because nobody's going into town at the moment. I mean, they must get a lot of money from car park charges. Anyway, we should be finishing. We're 2 hours 10 minutes nearly. I haven't made you feel nearly as guilty as I could have done.
But
then
Oh yeah,
I don't feel nearly as guilty as
honestly.
I should.
Yeah, because you asked me, what's the thing that you feel most guilty about that you're willing to admit publicly?
That I'm willing to admit publicly. That's a difficult one because my biggest problem is my naivety, that I will often say things that are not necessarily to my benefit to admit, that I actually think are more, that it's more beneficial that people hear.
I mean, it might be, but also, yeah, keep in mind that there's
legal aspects.
Possibility that you would be going into a teaching position sometime in the near future.
Yeah. I'd have to have a think about that. Guilt. Well, I mean, see, the thing is, with a lot of things that I've done, I've been found out about, so I feel like that guilt's been spent, so I don't feel so guilty about it, because I've kind of paid the price for a lot of things. Actually, no, I do. There's one thing when I think about it, even though I've paid the price, there is one thing that I've done that I believe was my biggest mistake in my whole life.
I have something in mind, but it might be something else.
My car incident.
Yeah, I was thinking.
I could have died, and I could have not been here. Yeah, drinking and driving, and then falling asleep at the wheel. Getting banned for a year wasn't, and having a 400 quid fine. I don't regret any of the actions that I took, in that I called the police, and you know, even though people I've spoken to afterwards have said, "Oh, you should have just kind of, you know, gone home and had a drink or whatever." And there are various ways that people have said you could have got away with it, but at the end of the day, I spent a year thinking about that, and it's like, you know, I could have not come home that day. Somebody could have died who had no blame or anything to do with me. Fortunately, it was the middle of the night, and it didn't. I didn't die. Nobody else got hurt. So, but yeah, that's my biggest regret. Whether or not I feel guilty about it is a bit of a different issue, though, because, and it's not just because I haven't, because I've kind of paid a price for it, because I don't think anything pays for that. I think it's just.
Do you think it's constructive to feel guilt?
No, I think people make mistakes, and you should just learn from your mistakes. I think feeling guilt, I don't think that anyone's immune from it, and I certainly feel a lot of guilt at times, but I think it prevents you from moving on. If it lingers, if you can recognize guilt and identify where it's coming from and learn from that, then I suppose it can have a positive effect. But I think it can be the most destructive force of all, really.
Yeah, I suppose, like, with my answer,
if it's not addressed.
Like, the thing that I felt most guilty of, I mean, I've had a lot of things that I felt very guilty at the time, but like I've since become, you know, I've learned from them, and I feel myself constantly improving.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you. The improving bit.
To some extent, I mean, I sort of see it as a measure of, like, I usually see myself 2 years ago as quite unsufferable, but in a way that's sort of like quite...
Oh, you're worse now.
What?
Sorry, carry on.
But like, when I'm 19, I'll look at how I am now. I mean, I sometimes look at how I am now and go, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, with any luck, you'll eventually reach an age where you think, I could never have been any different. I was just doing my best all the time.
Yeah, but like, I feel like I keep learning from the many mistakes I make.
Just be you now. You're not you then, and you're not you as you will be. Just kind of... Anyway, look, let's finish up the fuck off. It's nearly 2.25 hours, and I've run out of beer, and it's 25 to 12. And are you trying to be Scottish all of a sudden? You keep saying "I" all the time.
No, I get more Scottish the more I drink, and I was already sort of carrying on a hangover from last night. It's
either Scottish or Yorkshire. I mean, it'd be Scottish, but with me, it's like sort of I don't know. No, shut up. Just let's stop. Come on. Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
What the fuck was that?
Are we doing the outro?
Yep, ready yourselves, people. It's going to be a rocky road. Oh, Rocky Road. Do you like Rocky Road?
Marshmallows, I'm not a massive fan of.
Okay, let's finish the podcast.
They're very sweet, like sickly sweet.
Sorry, I shouldn't have. Carry on. Do the outro.
But the chocolate saves it. Anyway.
Yes.
I've been Fireball.
I've been the Orbiter.
And this
fucking
has
hell.
been
Spike.
Breaking Bollocks, episode 78.
Yeah.
Guilt.
As charged.
You know what you did.
But does anyone else? That's the issue. I mean, like, as long as nobody else knows, then should you feel guilty? I mean,
we're gonna start up again, aren't we?
Isn't that the be all and end all? Is like, did I get away with it? Is that not? I
don't want to get away with things that I'm genuinely upset that I did. I mean, I don't want to like report myself to the authorities or whatever, but I do want to right my wrongs with the people that I have wronged.
Yeah, have regrets and address them. Anyway, I'm going to need a piss very soon, so this afterbirth can't last too long. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with part 2 of Indonesia, won't we? Which
will be a spicy discussion about colonialism.
Yes. We've had some
quite
feedback.
Literally.
We've had some feedback. I don't know whether we're going to take any notice of it, but I feel like I should be slightly less immature simply because there is some serious subject matter. But I'm still going to drink and take the piss out of you.
Okay.
Very well done, by the way, with your research. It was quite astonishing. I learned a lot.
I literally just like took notes off of Britannica, but
well.
I did present it in
more than I did,
like my own way. But.
Anyway, let's finish. How do we finish in a guilt-free fashion?
What?
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.